Got a question for you, Ben, from Christina. Do we know if any other victims and how many will be testifying? Also, witnesses to these freak-offs. Can we expect any and how many?
I think that, and Jesse, you may know the exact number. I think we're going to hear from three additional victims,
Well, there
and
were supposed to be four, right? And one of them
four
we can't
total.
find. So yeah, maybe three.
Yeah, I had understood originally there were going to be four, which really, I think, establishes the pattern, which also, again, begs the question as to how hard you're going to cross-examine Cassie Ventura when you've got three other victims who are going to say the same thing. And yes, there may well be some witnesses, including the person in jail that you were just speaking about.
Yeah, I think other escorts or male performers may be taking the stand as well. Who they are, not entirely sure. Okay, here's a question for you, Mina. This is from Ari. Will Christina Coram, who is Sean Combs' I guess, former chief of staff, and Gene Deal, who at one point was his bodyguard, will they testify?
We don't know, I heard that they have about 100 people on the possible list. That's kind of the interesting thing about court. You could think something's happening or going to happen, and then there's a pivot because of maybe something that was said during testimony or cross. So I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting to hear their side of the story if they're being accused of helping in this alleged racketeering and organized sexual, crime company. It would be interesting to hear what they did. I know that one of them had released a statement stating that she's never aided in any crimes. So I think it would be important to hear their side of the story because at the end of the day, you do have to prove that organized crime racketeering piece.
Got another question from Chris Bono that I think is great. I'll throw this to you, Ben. Would Cassandra Ventura need to give that money back for any reason? So again, she had that settlement with Sean Combs, now testifying against him. Would she have to give the money back for any reason?
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah. And Mina, you were shaking your head too. No.
And you know what? The fact that he gave that money in under 24 hours also speaks volumes, right?
Yeah, no, it's although I don't know, there are people who've said, and Ben, you go to this. There are people who settle for all different kinds of reasons, right? Ben, they don't just settle because they're guilty of what they're, or, liable for what they're being accused of, if we're talking in a civil sense. But they settle for other reasons. They don't want it to amplify. They don't want to go through litigation. Maybe they settle before a lawsuit's filed because they don't want it to go public. We can't just automatically take the settlement to mean that all of this is true, right, Ben? Or what do you think?
Yeah, completely right, Jesse, that people settle for all kinds of reasons to avoid stress, to avoid legal fees. But the quicker the settlement, as Mina pointed out, and the amount of the settlement do speak, the bigger the settlement, the worse it looks.
By the way, I have a question for you, Ben. He's got a massive legal team. Is that what you expected?
Yeah, that's what I would expect, although that can be an advantage and a disadvantage. Personally, I like a smaller team with everybody on the team knowing everything about the case. The problem when you have a big team, as you know, is that you'll have people who know little pieces of the case. So it's just a question of preference. But yes, I would expect him to have a huge team.
Interesting. Okay, got a question for you, Mina. This is from Donnie Darko 99. No one's asking why did she sign the 10-album contract and why did Diddy didn't let her create more albums if that's what she signed to?
Well, Danny, that is a great point, and I
Donnie,
think the
Donnie Darko, Donnie Darko.
Donnie, thank you, Donnie. That's a great point, but I think the prosecution, if I'm right about this, they're going to point out that maybe because the music wasn't important to Diddy. At one point, Cassie did say, "This was my job, these freak offs." So I think the fact that she couldn't really actively participate in her music career because he controlled that, and then she had to participate in these other sexual activities. I think that's actually going to help the prosecution. But you're right, why sign her to this deal? She was also 19, And a lot of young artists sign deals that are not favorable to them. It's very important to have an attorney when you're signing a deal like that. And I don't know if Cassie had that present, but I'm not an attorney, but Ben, you are. I would never allow my client to sign a 10 album deal. I mean, like I said, even if you release the album every year, you would be under a contract for 10 years. That's ridiculous.
Ben would never let that happen, right, Ben?
No, no way.
You know, Mina, you say you're not a lawyer, but you know the law backwards and forwards as much as anybody else.
Okay,
Okay.
let me say this though. I went to Syracuse University. I'm a
Yeah.
new high school, television, radio, and film, and political science, Jesse. I was almost there, almost.
And you're giving me a hard time about self-promoting sidebar. My gosh, Mina, what is going on here? No, I just messing. So okay, here's something that's interesting from Janae Hall. Janae Hall for you, Ben. Will witness 3 be held in contempt if they don't show up, since they're saying they do not know where this witness is?
If the witness violates a subpoena or violates a court order, the judge could issue a capias, which is basically a summons for the witness's arrest. But that's only if there's been proper service or a court order. If the witness is simply missing, the witness is not necessarily in contempt.
But isn't the problem, Ben, even if they were to compel her to take the stand, that could affect her testimony and might not work for the prosecution's benefit. And they might say, we're cutting our losses. She's an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a witness who is so reluctant that she's avoiding service, you probably don't want that witness, especially when you have the burden of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You don't want a loose witness there because it can be the subject of the closing arguments that Mina mentioned.
We got a question for you, Mina, from Moose Moose. How long does this case go for?
They're estimating 6 to 8 weeks, so 2 months tops, which I think is pretty fast considering other cases. I mean, Jesse, you and I covered Young Thug, and that went for
Wow.
over a year.
Don't use Young Thug as an example. That was insane. I mean, that shouldn't happen. But you know, it is interesting, Mina, when you think about it and the power of Cassie Ventura's testimony. There are some attorneys I've spoken to who say, hey, it's great to get her out in first, right? Primacy, recency, one of the first witnesses they hear. Then again, 8 weeks later, that impact of her testimony might fade a bit. No, Mina?
Yeah, I agree. But we also don't know who's coming next, right?
Right.
And what their testimony is. So I think that the prosecution, it's hard to say because we're not in the courtroom. And that's some of the limitation with this particular case. You have to just kind of get it from word of mouth from other people. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say how these next witnesses are gonna impact the jury and what their testimony is gonna be.
So we got a question for you, Ben, from Gossip Squirrel. Okay, that's great. Will we see Diddy speak at any point during the trial?
Great question. Probably the most critical question from Gossip Squirrel. My personal theory is that he's going to defy convention and testify. The rule, as you know, is that the defendant doesn't testify. I go back to the video. That's why I'm not sure it matters that it will have been a long time before Cassie has testified, because the prosecution is going to show that video again in closing argument. But if I were the defense, I would think very strongly about putting him on. I think he's got to explain that. He's got to apologize for it. The problem is he's already apologized.
Yeah, he did.
Come in.
Yeah, he apologized, Ben, in that Instagram video, and that didn't go over well.
No, so he's going to face cross-examination out the wazoo, but I still think he's got to show some remorse so they don't think that he's such a monster as he appears to be in the video.
So we have a poll up on Law and Crime. We always put a bunch of polls up during the course of this case. The question we asked is, who do you think won week one? 67% say the prosecution won week one. 33% say the defense won week one. You think that's a fair assessment of the week, Mina?
think so. I've seen some contradiction online. I've seen, the comments kind of say, where's the crime? This seems like a domestic violence case, but they're getting to it. They've sprinkled in different different elements, bringing in the escorts from a variety of places. I actually have it written down here: prostitutes from Miami, Las Vegas, LA, Ibiza. They've introduced the fact that, Diddy might have blackmailed her by saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to release these freak off videos of you. They've introduced the fact that when something's going wrong during the freak off, someone's getting baby oil, or someone's orchestrating these things and supplying, and kind of it adds to that organized crime bit. So I think they've had some successes. I do think that it would be wise, to be honest, to put Diddy on the stand. I mean, if I was on this case, I'm not an attorney, but I would put him on. Just it would humanize him, and I think he'd be able to tell his story in his own words, and then help the jury really understand who he is. He's very charismatic. You don't get to be a mogul by not being a people person. So they're painting him as this violent person, which he can be, but there's also another side of him where he's very good with people. You don't have multiple businesses, Sean John, Ciroc, you're representing liquor companies. You don't get to be this person without being a good people person. And I think
Yeah.
it would be wise to let the jury see that.
I would say, look, it's his decision at the end of the day, and he's probably going to make a game time decision based on how they think they're doing in the case and whether it's necessary. I got a question from Martina Masadas. Any insight into why Sean Combs' children were allowed in court during such sensitive testimony? Well, they're adults. They want to be there. They want to be there. It's their choice. I mean, it's probably not the most comfortable testimony to listen to about your father's sex life and what he's accused of doing. But they're there to support him. We get a question. Oh, we have an update from court. So yeah, this is Sean Combs' attorney, Anna Esteveo. I want to say we're going to finish with Cross faster than he thought, probably before the next break. Combs' other attorney, Mark Agnifilo, says, may I speak with the government for 1 minute? The judge says, bring the jury back. There was also something about Tenny Garagos on exhibits and redactions. Okay, we have a question here, Ben, from Soul Shadow. Do you think at some point we'll have psychological experts who can explain the mechanisms of psychological control in this type of relationship? And if you don't know the answer to this, Ben, I do, but you tell me if you want to answer this one.
If I were the prosecution, I would, but I turn to you for the actual answer.
So you're going to know this name. Dr. Dawn Hughes is going to be testifying. And she will not be allowed to testify about coercive control, but other certain dynamics of a relationship she will be able to testify to. And I know, Ben, she played a role in your trial.
Yes, she did. Yes, I think she had mixed results.
Yep. Well, that's going to be very interesting to see, because I guess, Mina, the question becomes, and this is the question, right? If you were abused, Cassandra Ventura, if you were trafficked, Cassandra Ventura, why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you leave? Why did you, even though she said she didn't keep coming back, why did you stay with him? There are cases that our understanding of sexual abuse, and this is allegations here, they've changed over time, Mina, about why alleged victims do these things. And I was in the Harvey Weinstein trial, okay? I mean, I covered it the entire time. And that was a big point of analysis, is that if Weinstein did this to you, why did you stay in contact with him? You can be abused and do that. It's documented. So it becomes a very interesting and important conversation to have, Mina.
There's a psychology behind the abuse that is very important to explain in this particular trial and any trial involving sexual abuse and trafficking.
Absolutely. So again, we have a question from Legs 7K. Ben, now Cassie has given evidence. Is there a possibility there may be a male witness similar to Witness 1? Now, Witness 1 was the security guard, so I don't know if they were actually referring to Witness 2, who is that male performer that allegedly was paid to have sex with Cassandra Ventura. But I imagine we're going to be hearing from probably more individuals in that line of work, Ben.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yep. We got a question from Ashley Glass. If the prosecution didn't think, I'll throw this to you, Ben. Ashley Glass, if the prosecution didn't think they could get him on these charges, why would they rate him and stuff? Like, I mean, it's a fair question, right? So we keep talking about, I've said this in the opening statement. It felt to me like the prosecution really was spending a lot of time trying to explain to the jury why this is a crime. Not if he committed a crime, why this is a crime. Racketeering, sex trafficking, complicated charges, right? But this is the Southern District of New York, Ben. These are one of the top prosecuting teams in the entire United States. They wouldn't have gone after him. Just why? Because they can't, there's no state charges he could be charged with, and they have to get him on something. No, they would go after him, I think, feeling like they have a strong case, right?
Absolutely, and they wouldn't do the raid. Of course, they have to get a judge to approve that. They wouldn't even try that unless they felt they had a very strong case.
We've got a question, Mina, from Janae Hall. Is it likely the defense will have any of his children testify on his behalf?
I wouldn't. As a parent, I wouldn't want to put my children anywhere near this.
Yeah.
Keep them away. Don't open them up to this. Protect them, right? I absolutely would not do that.
Well, if he's convicted and there's a sentencing hearing, I'm sure his children will make statements in some capacity in his side, for sure. I mean, that's something we can expect. You're right, Mina?
I do want to add that there's also things that are unsaid, right? His children being there, his mother being there. Those are all unsaid things. We support you. We believe you. I mean, a lot of the analysis from the reporters are, who's looking where, who's doing what. His daughters, when they were having very graphic testimony about the sexual nature of this trial, his daughters left. All of those things are being watched. The jury can see that. So there's a lot of things that are unsaid that you don't need to put your child on the stand to say.
Yeah, and by the way, it goes to another question, Ben. When you have a client, right? Okay, whether it's a celebrity client or any kind of client, you have to coach them on how to behave in that courtroom at all times because the jury's going to be watching. I imagine the jury looks over at your client 60% of the time, 70% of the time to see maybe their reactions to everything. Am I wrong? I mean, you have to coach them about how they behave.
No, you're absolutely right. And every time you're in the courtroom, and it goes for the attorneys too, although people pay less attention to the attorneys. But if there's family there, and I agree with Mina, just having them there is great testimony because it shows support. But the family also needs to be careful how they react. So everybody has to be schooled on how to behave in the courtroom and not to speak outside the courtroom because you never know where a juror might be.
So keep the questions coming in. We're going to be talking for a little bit longer. We got another question from Chris Buono. Has the witness list been released? If not, why? No, I believe it's sealed. And that would make sense in a case like this when you're talking not only about, first of all, you have alleged victims who are testifying under pseudonyms. So it gives you the idea of the sensitivity of these charges. And you want to make sure that nothing impacts this trial, that none of their identities are revealed that could compromise their testimony in any way. Mina, this is a case where Combs himself has been accused of trying to improperly contact witnesses in this case. So having the witness list sealed in a criminal case like this, not surprising, right?
Right. And also their safety, right? I mean, they're painting this man to be someone that will blow up your car, right? So it's like people might be concerned about their safety. And that's why they wouldn't release the list.
Yeah, we have a question. Ooh, this is an interesting one. Who do I give this to? I'll start with you, Ben. This is from Bird. Is it likely this is a trial by social media?
I don't think so. I mean, there's certainly a lot of social media attention and attention to your show, but I think the jurors will base their decision on the evidence they hear.
You would hope so, but obviously, look, Ben, your trial was the most watched trial, I think, of all time. And everybody had an opinion. Everybody was making videos. Their courtroom, people were making videos outside the courthouse. You don't want to have an effect on the jury, but it does become a difficult question.
Yeah, it does. And I could see the concern about it, but again, hopefully, as you say, hopefully the jury will put that out of their minds and focus on the testimony they hear from both sides and be fair.
We have a question. Oh, we have an update from court. So the jury is entering. Combs' attorney, Ana Esteveo, says, Miss Ventura, we're almost done here. Ventura responds, thank you. Esteveo asks, I will read Mr. Combs' messages. You're going to make a beautiful mother, God bless. So that's apparently what Combs had written Cassandra Ventura. Ventura responds, I said, thank you, God bless. Mina, what do you make of their exchanges, the loving exchanges between them? What do you think the value of that is?
I mean, there was love there, right? No one's denying that. And I think, as I said before, both things can be true, right? They could have loved each other, and this could have started very innocently. But obviously something went wrong where Cassie feels like she was victimized, and to the point where it's criminal. So both of those things can be true, and the prosecution has to prove um, what the facts are.
Have a question from Gossip Squirrel. If Diddy is convicted, what does prison look like for him? Will he get the celebrity treatment like house arrest? So before I throw that to you, Ben, when I talk about what prison could be for him, racketeering carries a maximum of life in prison. Is a sex trafficking. You're talking about a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years in prison. Transportation for purposes of prostitution, that's a max sentence of 10 years in prison. So prison is, if he's convicted, is a strong likelihood here. Talk to me, Ben, about what we could anticipate for a celebrity behind bars.
Wait, I don't know. It could cut either way. I mean, there might be people in the prison who admire him and might protect him. But it could cut the other way. I think it would be a very grim situation in either scenario.
I don't know the answer to this one, Mina. This is Legs 7K. Do we know over the years if Cassie had hospital records to show any injuries to back her case? I knew there was something about medical records going into this case. Maybe our producers can check it out, but I don't think so. They would have been asked about it.
Yeah, from my knowledge, nothing was reported. And I think that's the big question that the defense really has to outline. Why? Why did you not report this? Now, you can easily put an expert on the stand and explain why, right? Many people of abuse and sexual trafficking, they have a strange allegiance to the person who's hurting them. And like I said before, it's a psychology to it. So, yeah, there's a reason why there are no medical records, but that's a valid point, and that's something that the defense really needs to hit home. If this horrible thing was happening to you on and off for 10 years, why didn't you document it properly?
I don't know if they're even necessarily fighting that this happened to her, Ben. I mean, there were photographs that were shown. We all saw the 2016 tape. Once you see the 2016 tape, you're like, I believe every instance when she says she was physically abused. They're just, I mean, the truth is, Ben, they're just recharacterizing what this abuse was.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the video is so powerful. It establishes the abuse.
One thing I will say from Cassie's original lawsuit, it said Mr. Combs had Miss Ventura's personal medical records sent directly to his email address. For instance, when Miss Ventura began experiencing memory loss, potentially due to excessive drug use and or head injuries caused by Mr. Combs' beatings, as described below, her MRI results were provided directly to Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs also repeatedly arranged for his staff to drive Miss Ventura to certain doctor's appointments. That's pretty illuminating there, Amina.
I mean, that's the power that we're dealing with here. I mean, where are her HIPAA laws?
Right.
Because why is her MRI being delivered to someone that's not her? That's just insanity.
So we got a question here from Dr. N. Ben, does the defense get all the prosecution's evidence ahead of time? And can they change the list in the middle of the trial?
Well, certainly under Brady, they're going to get a lot of evidence. The defense is entitled to the evidence, and we'll have it sufficiently in advance. And as I think we talked about earlier, there will be some witnesses who weren't on the list.
Well, I'll tell you, pre-trial, that was a ton of litigation between them. Ton of litigation where the defense kept saying, you know, they're first of all, Sean Combs was hit with superseding indictment after superseding indictment. They say the prosecution's trying to introduce new theories. They want to introduce all this new evidence. They aren't telling us who's going to be testifying in time. We can't properly prepare for trial. And yet all the time, Mina, it seemed to me the defense was spearheading, going straight ahead towards this trial. You know, that's a question too. I think that's a question too. It's very rare to see a federal criminal case go to trial in less than a year from arrest and indictment. But if he had made bail, I've always said he would have tried to push this criminal case as far down the road as possible. Him being locked up and being denied bail, I think he wanted to go to trial immediately, try to get, you know, acquitted and get out of there. That still seems to be what the game plan was, Mina.
Yeah, and that came across really in the reporting. Initially, it was like, okay, he wants to get this done fast. You know, we want to make sure that we get this done and over with. But then there was a request for the 2-month delay. So I think as more attorneys got involved, especially after Brian Steele got involved, it was more so like, whoa, we need some time to prepare. We want to push back. And then the judge did not agree to that. But I said that before. I'm surprised at how fast this is moving. And I think
Yeah.
because it is a high profile celebrity, you know, the judge is very adamant from what I've seen about keeping this on track and making sure that this is tight and fair.
We have another update from court before we wrap things up. Cassie Ventura apparently wrote Combs, "We should talk and have closure." And Miss Esteveo, who's playing the part of Combs, said, Mr. Combs sent back a tear face emoji. He said, "You were always my ride or die." Ventura said, "I thought it was nice." Esteveo says, "You've been craving that." Ventura responds, "Before, I don't think I was craving now." So again, a lot of their dynamics in the relationship. Listen, I'm losing my voice. I've been talking so much. Mina Lona, Ben Shu, thank you both so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate your terrific insight, and it was great to see both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jesse.
Jesse. And congratulations on
Oh.
being a popular podcast.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. It was,
You
again,
deserve it. You've been doing it for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's really all due to the support of our incredible viewers. So, guys, thank you so much out there for watching us here on the live stream. Before we wrap things up, I just want to say we are planning to continue to do these live shows for you every day of this trial and try to cover this case for you as much as we can. And the reason we can do that, one of the other reasons, aside from your great support, is because we have an incredible sponsor partner, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. And if you don't know who they are, this is a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. And you know why they have so many? Because they win a lot. I'll give you an example. They secured a $6 million verdict for a car crash victim in Florida, a $13 million for wrongful auto death in Georgia, another $6 million for a trucking accident in New York. And I want to keep this in mind. This was all after insurance offered their clients significantly less in each of these cases. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and see what you can get, find out what you can deserve. Morgan & Morgan, they make it so easy. You can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks, everything from uploading documents, signing contracts, talking to your legal team. It can all be done from your phone. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LCLive by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. That is all we have for you right now, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber. We'll catch you next time.